On April 18, 2016, the body of a fitness instructor was found at Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas. Her murder garnered significant media attention after police released surveillance footage from inside the church. The surveillance footage shows an unknown person dressed in what appears to be police tactical gear, walking around the church's hallways while occasionally breaking glass and opening doors. The case gained the attention of the whole country, which remains a mystery. This is the case of Missy Bevers.
No, I do not believe that she was, I believe that she was targeted. Okay, that's my opinion. That's not any information that anybody provided me.
Missy Bevers was born on August 9, 1972, to parents James and Norma in Graham, Texas. Graham is a small city in north-central Texas and is the county seat of Young County. She was a middle child, having an older brother named Clifford and a younger one named Clint. She was described as a friendly young woman who had no problem making friends. She's described as a selfless woman who wants to help others, and her obituary states, in 1988, she graduated from Jacksboro High School and attended several different colleges before finally finding her place at Tarleton State University, where she pursued a bachelor's degree of science, which she received in 1995. She worked retail jobs for several years, and it was during this period that she met and fell in love with Brandon Bevers, who she would marry on June 20, 1998. Her marriage to Brandon seemed to complement her life. On March 11, 2001, she gave birth to her first child, a daughter named Hannah, and it was at this time that she left her teaching position to raise Hannah. Though she loved her job, Missy felt it was more important that she be there to raise her daughter and considered it a likelihood. On March 7, 2003, Missy gave birth to a second daughter, Allie. Again, Missy felt her place was at home with the kids. Then, on November 6, 2007, Missy gave birth to a third daughter who would be named Sarah. At some point, she became a fitness trainer for Camp Gladiator. Camp Gladiator defines itself as a fitness program designed to positively impact physical fitness and ultimately the lives of as many people as possible. By 2016, Missy was 45 years old and living with her husband and 3 daughters in Red Oak. Missy developed a large presence on social media networks as part of her fitness program. Missy began hosting early morning classes at Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas. The classes began at 5 a.m., and Missy typically arrived 32 to 45 minutes early. On the night of April 17, 2016, Missy read a weather report that called for rain the next day. Despite the weather, Missy was determined to host the class as always and went online posting. This was posted to Facebook, where Missy had hundreds of friends but typically left her posts open to the public for all to see. She later posted that she was going to bed since she had to be up at 3:30 a.m. at approximately 5 to 6 a.m. On April 18, 2016, the first of 2 911 calls came in. The call described Missy Bevers having been found inside the church unresponsive and obviously a victim of an attack. When EMTs arrived on the scene, they found broken glass and other signs that indicated that someone had broken into the church that morning. The EMTs found Missy deceased upon their arrival, and later examination would show that Missy had been murdered and suffered multiple punctures wounds to the head and chest. They also saw signs on Missy's body and that she had obviously fought and struggled with her attacker. Police arrived on the scene moments later and found evidence of forced entry into the church. According to the investigators, the perpetrator had used a pry bar to smash out a window in a side door of the church. Police were tight-lipped about whether or not the murder weapon was recovered from the scene. At first, police believed they were dealing with a theft gone wrong. Their initial theory was that someone had broken into the church with the intent of stealing, and had stumbled across Missy in the process of the robbery and murdered her as a result of this. The church itself had a system of surveillance cameras, and very quickly, police began reviewing the footage. The images that they found were not only shocking, but would lead to a great deal of speculation. Using the footage, they were able to map out a timeline of events that took place during the morning Missy Bevers was murdered. According to the official timeline at 3:50 a.m., on April 18th, an unknown assailant was captured on surveillance footage breaking into the church. This suspect was dressed in a complete mock police SWAT team. Officers' gear in black boots, black pants, a black riot-style helmet, black gloves, a black top, and a black vest that says police on the back. This person was wearing tactical gear and carrying a hammer or mallet with which he or she had broken a window in order to gain entrance to the building. The gear that the suspect wore made it impossible for authorities to determine gender, and the only real clue that could possibly lead to identification was how the perpetrator moved, described as a walking style, which seemed to indicate some kind of an injury to the right leg or foot. Further analysis suggests that the suspect stood between 5 foot 2 inches and 5 foot 7 inches tall. The suspect walks down a dimly lit hallway, dragging his or her right hand along the wall. In another shot, the suspect is seen opening a door and stepping out of frame. At the point in which the suspect opens the door, there's a clear shot of some kind of blunt weapon in the right hand. A few moments later, the suspect approaches a locked door. At this point, the individual produces some tools from within the tactical gear and attempts to force the door open, but is unsuccessful. The suspect opens another door, steps into the door frame, but then turns and continues back down the hallway. At this point, the suspect begins walking back towards the camera and swings the hammer at a few more windows along the way. Strangely, while the suspect will open unlocked doors and attempt to unlock doors which are sealed, he or she never enters the rooms, just whips the doors open, takes a look, and then continues down the hallway. The suspect wanders at times, and at no point displays any sense of confusion about location or nervousness about being caught or interrupted. This has led many to believe that the suspect may have been familiar with this environment, possibly having been there before or having studied it in the past. Another odd detail of the video is that when the assailant breaks windows, he or she doesn't swing the hammer with a large force or violence, but rather unenthusiastically thrusts the hammer in the direction of the glass. For the next 30 minutes, the suspect wanders very casually around the church, entering the frame of surveillance cameras here and there, and continuing on his or her way, seeming mostly disinterested in the environment. At 4:20 a.m., Missy Bevers arrives at the church to begin setting up for her class. The suspect is seen on camera just minutes before her arrival, though would disappears off camera in the moments before Missy herself steps inside. The confrontation between Missy and the suspect hasn't been made clear, though police fairly rapidly release several clips to the public, which show the suspect in hopes that someone might be able to identify the individual. There was footage which showed a vehicle in the area, a light-colored Nissan Altima with a distinctive sticker or emblem on the back bumper. Though they were unable to make it out clearly, a still frame of the vehicle was released, the driver of. This vehicle has never been located and has not come forward to talk with police. Initially, police released a statement about the suspect referring to the perpetrator as him, but they later retracted that specification of gender, explaining that the more they look at it, the less sure they are that they are dealing with a male. In their statement, police said that it was backing off of our statement that the suspect on video was a man. I know we said he over and over again, and that was a mistake. There's a lot of speculation based on the gait and appearance that this person may be a woman. It's a legitimate question now. Police were questioning gender due to several factors, predominantly because the gear conceals the body so strongly, but also due to the suspect's movements. Midlothian police would state that in certain portions of the footage, the suspect appears to have what has been described as a feminine. The footage also indicates that the suspect has a distinct walk that is indicative of some type of injury that affects the right leg or foot. Whether or not the suspect suffered from a foot injury is unknown, though others have gone on to speculate that the movements may seem to suggest an injury because the suspect may have been wearing boots that were either too large or too small, in hopes of throwing off clues about his or her identity. Rather quickly, after watching the footage, police ruled out the possibility of theft as a motive. Later inspection of the property found that police had theorized no items were missing and there were no indications that any kind of theft had been conducted. Investigators begin to theorize that the suspect broke into the church not with the intent to rob, but specifically to be there waiting for Missy, and that murder was the ultimate motive. During their investigation, police went just a few miles down the road to SWFA Outdoors, a sporting goods store. Surveillance footage for the store showed a vehicle similar to the Nissan that they had previously released a photo of. In the footage, the Nissan drives slowly through the parking lot. At one point, it stops, the lights turn off, and the vehicle sits for several moments before the lights come back on, and the vehicle exits the parking lot. This footage was shot just a few hours before the murder, and though investigators believe that it could be linked to the murder, they have no evidence to say so officially. Police are eager to speak with the driver in hopes that he or she may have seen something that morning which could help identify the killer. Baffled by the crime and the method by which it was conducted, the police called in assistance from the FBI as well as the Texas Rangers. There was a special dog brought in from the ATF in order to sweep through the church, searching for evidence of gunshot residue. Brandon, her husband, arrived at police headquarters 2 days after the crime, having had to come back into town. He was off on a long-planned fishing trip in Mississippi and arrived with his brother Chad. The two arrived to speak with police and to make arrangements about recovering Missy's truck from the church parking lot where she had left it. Brandon later said that she was a great woman and a great wife, a great friend, and she will be missed by many people. Police were then stuck in a position where they were trying to determine whether or not Missy knew her attacker, or if this was an instance of a random attack, though evidence seemed to suggest that at a minimum the perpetrator likely entered the church and was waiting to attack. They were unsure if this person was waiting for Missy or someone else, and Missy just happened to arrive. First, friends and family felt very distinctly that whoever had committed the crime knew Missy and had targeted her specifically. Brandon, Missy's husband, later stated that whoever this person knew my wife and had a motive. There's no doubt about it. He would later state in another interview that I've pretty much exhausted every scenario and every avenue that I can think of who could have done this.
No, I do not believe that she was, I believe that she was targeted. Okay, that's my opinion. That's not any information that anybody provided me.
In hopes of finding a suspect or any leading information, police began digging into Missy's life as well as the lives of her family. They scoured her social media and began making connections that they considered to be of interest. In a discussion with a friend of Missy's, police were informed that just days before her murder, she had received a message on LinkedIn from someone whom she didn't know. Missy is alleged to have shown this message to the friend, which she described as creepy, though this friend was unable to recall the name of the man who had sent the message. Police obtained warrants in order to gather information from the cell phones of several members of Missy's family. Among those whose records were checked was Missy's husband, Brandon. Police alleged that text messages exchanged between Brandon and Missy suggest that the two were experiencing financial difficulties, as well as having discussions about extramarital affairs. Police also obtained warrants to gather cell tower data, as they believed it was possible that Missy may have been in contact with her killer, and that the killer may have checked social media to ensure that she would be arriving at the church that morning. When the information became public about possible infidelity in the marriage, many in the public began to look at Brandon as a potential suspect. A slew of online investigators went so far as to not only Brandon's involvement, but even his father, Randy Bevers. Many speculated that Randy had a distinctive walking style that they viewed was similar to that of the suspect seen in the footage. Brandon and his father have vehemently denied any involvement in this crime and have made it through the media for junior investigators to leave this up to the authorities. The family has stated that all of the discussions online only bring pain to them and that Brandon is trying hard to protect his young daughters from all the baseless accusations hurled against him. At the time of the murder, Brandon was in Mississippi on a fishing trip, while Randy was traveling in California. Police would later state neither Brandon nor his father is suspected of killing Missy. Christy Stout, Missy's sister-in-law, released the following statement on Facebook regarding accusations hurled at her family. All you Facebook detectives out there, I'm sure haven't checked with American Airlines to verify they were on the planes headed there, nor did any of you check with the phone companies to see that Randy Bevers' phones were actually pinging in the San Diego area at the time of the murder. After all, the FBI drove to Biloxi, Mississippi to confirm with others on the fishing trip that Brandon was there at the time of the murder, as well as verified pings from cell phone towers that he was there, for those of you who say Brandon hired someone to do this again. The FBI has thoroughly watched and studied his accounts and has seen no large money being moved around. 4 days after Missy was murdered, Randy Bevers dropped off a blood-soaked woman's white double XL long-sleeve shirt to the Dry Clean Super King in Midlothian, Texas. The dry cleaner said that the shirt had been previously washed in an attempt to get the blood out. Randy alleged that the blood on the shirt came from a dog who was involved in a fight with another dog. Police obtained a warrant and took possession of the shirt in order to conduct a DNA analysis. The lab tested the blood on the shirt and was able to confirm that it was not human blood. If the police believe that Brandon and Randy weren't involved and have tight alibis, then why do others continue to dig into them? People consider it a possibility that Brandon, though he may have been out of town during the crime, may know the name of the person who killed his wife. Many have suggested that revenge for an alleged affair may have been the motive for Brandon to have wanted his wife dead. However, they came up with 2 other suspects that they believed could be connected. One was a man who had attended Missy's fitness classes and who happened to have a wife who was short at a stocky build and was suffering from a broken foot. It has been suggested that investigators did look into this possibility, but quickly ruled it out. Another name was a woman who had attended a few free classes with Camp Gladiator and was struggling to lose weight after having a child. Though she only attended 4 out of 5 classes, she did end up being captured in a photograph with the group, which included Missy. That photo led many to begin investigating her. The evidence they alleged could point to the crime was all circumstantial. She had injured her foot at work. Police later spoke after receiving many tips from online researchers, but found nothing that they felt connected her to the case. The family has been very supportive of the Midlothian police, making multiple statements about how cooperative they've been, how hard they've worked, and how every time they reach out with a thought, the police themselves have already had the thought and investigated it. With no officially named suspects, with no real leads, with nothing that appears to show why Missy Bevers was murdered, it remains a startling and tragic mystery. But one would expect in a case like this that the theories are not in short supply. They come from all manner of sources, from the police themselves, the family, friends, and a slew of online investigators who believe they have the answers that could crack open this case. The first theory is that Missy Bevers' murder was unmotivated because it was not planned. Many have speculated that the person who committed this atrocious crime was not there with that intent, but instead to vandalize the church itself. They point to the fact that the assailant arrived early in the morning when no one was there and broke into the church. The assailant then spent 30 minutes walking around, breaking into rooms and shattering windows. Many believe the suspect intended to damage the church and did not expect Missy Bevers to arrive when she did. This theory also splits off into another. The second theory suggests that the person who murdered Missy Bevers did have murder as a motive, but that Missy was not the target. Who the target could have been, none can speculate. Perhaps a regular churchgoer, perhaps a member of Missy's class, maybe someone entirely different. Either way, this theory suggests that when Missy arrived, the suspect became startled and felt the only way out was to kill her to conceal his or her identity, which suggests that Missy Bevers' death was more of a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, though many disagree with this theory. Another theory is that Missy was the target, though it becomes a question whether the suspect elected to commit this crime or was hired or asked to do it. If indeed the suspect committed the crime out of a personal desire or motive, this would suggest a link between Missy and her killer. The crime itself was brutal, conducted in close combat, and certainly seems to suggest a personal data or link between Missy and the person who stole her life from her. It all becomes a question of why. This is where many have tried to make connections to people who have interacted with Missy, even if only once or twice. The fourth theory is that the suspect was sent there by someone else who wanted Missy dead. The list is both long and short, with no name truly being known, and only some suggested, some believe that Brandon Bevers hired someone to kill his wife while he was out of town with an ironclad alibi. While the family reacted as though they were surprised about Missy's alleged infidelity, investigators found evidence to suggest that Brandon and Missy had discussed it, leading many to believe that Brandon planned out the murder, possibly even longer than he'd been planning his trip to Mississippi. Though it's completely speculative, this is one of the more popular theories. The next theory, which connects somewhat to Brandon, is that Missy was murdered by her own father-in-law, Randy Bevers. Whether this was done by the request of his son or his own anger, no one can really decide. Truly, the only pieces of evidence, and I use the words evidence loosely, which implies any connection between Randy and Missy's death, is that Randy has somewhat of a similar walk to the person in the surveillance footage. That's it. No hard evidence or details of the investigation place him at the scene, and he was known to be out of the state at the time the murder took place. Still, this doesn't stop people from continuing to list him as a person of interest. Over a year has gone by, and yet no real answers have been found. Without a suspect, it becomes a convoluted mess of speculation and rumor. A beautiful woman, a mother of 3, a wife, a sister, and a daughter was murdered, and so little has been uncovered. A family has been shattered by a senseless crime with no apparent resolution in sight. Police received thousands of tips in the first 2 months of the investigation and spent over $400,000 in man-hours and resources to look into this murder. Authorities continue to receive tips every week and are frustrated that this case has remained a mystery for over a year now. Missy's family desperately wants answers as to why she was murdered and who did it. They want justice for the brilliant life that was stolen away and the broken family left behind, so that they can move forward without their wife and mother, but possibly have closure. The murder of Missy Bevers is a disturbing and brutal crime, made worse by the incredibly baffling nature of it. You have a 45-year-old mother of 3 who's dedicated her life to helping others, be it as a special education teacher or a fitness trainer. Everyone who knew her spoke volumes about her kind nature and how giving she was. The kind of woman who would give you the shirt off her back if she knew you needed it more than she did that day. Initially, a reward was set at $10,000 before doubling to $20,000 and rising to $50,000. As of 2021, there is a reward of $1,50,000 for information potentially helpful in capturing the suspect.